de difícil.
Una visa para ir a España.
Una cucaracha.
Ganoncho.
Ah, j'ai été de test.
沖縄はどこですか？
沖縄どこですか？はい、違いますね。はい、次。
Oui.
I think that it's important for you to know a language other than your own because it can help you connect with a person on a different level.
Was gefällt dir?
Fußball gefällt mir.
I want them to become world citizens, not just a citizen of their own community.
We all experience the same things. We all have the same basic wants and needs.
Что вы думаете, можно увидеть в
You
Санкт-Петербурге?
get to speak with people that you might not have been able to speak with before, learn a little bit more about their culture. It could change your life, learning more about how somebody else lives their life. So I think it's vital.
Ahora, ustedes, un fin diferente, por favor.
Después de la cirugía, Bertrand cambió su nombre y no movió a la Nueva York.
Ah, bueno, no cambió su nombre y no se mudó para Nueva York. ¿Algo más?
Beltrán se fue a ver a Ambrosio y Ambrosio se sintió malo.
Ah, se sintió mal. Muy bien.
I believe the moral of the story was that when wrong is done to you, you don't have to take revenge. You can go into a situation and you can put your best foot in, but you don't have to be mean to the person that's been mean to you, basically.
Bueno, muy bien.
Y después se juntaron y se pusieron amigos para siempre.
Teachers need to convey to students that when they are engaged in the interpretive mode, they have the opportunity to bring their own experiential background to that setting. It allows them the opportunity to be able to sort of read between the lines. They can read between the lines or they can view between the lines. This is what I think is going on, or this is how I envision this happening. They're probably doing this because, and it's a wonderful creative opportunity for students to be able to think aloud in the language or even write what they're thinking about the language. But there are no yes or no answers. It's interpretive.
How is this not a translation? Justin, do you have your translation out?
I do.
You do. Okay, can you read back first chapter 18?
This is, he said, that sound which is separated by uneven intervals. But nevertheless,
by exploring the distinction between translation and interpretation using classic works from Cicero and Mozart, Lori DeBerry helps her Latin students gain a new perspective on ancient literature.
What is Cicero saying about the spheres of music?
There were high and low pitches.
And do we hear those high and low pitches on earth?
No, we can't, but it says that learned men have imitated with strings or on strings.
Very good. Okay. And those high and low pitches which we can't hear, why can't we hear them?
They exist in space with the spheres, the planets, I guess.
Okay, they exist in heaven, but also what else?
We're so used to hearing the sound that we don't even notice it anymore.
That's right. We're so used to hearing it that we don't even notice it. Just like in the opera, we have, "He who on the banks of the falling Nile lives does not hear the noise of that raging torrent."
Today we were looking at how the actual libretto, the words, were an interpretation as opposed to a translation, and that's a really important distinction for students to make, especially as they're starting to read undiluted Latin for the first time. So by looking at the libretto and looking at the themes of the opera as opposed to what Cicero has written, it really brings into the forefront the difference between translation and interpretation.
Through the communication goal, teachers can encourage students to formally express and present their ideas to an audience. This is the focus of the presentational mode of communication, incorporating both public speaking and writing skills.
Where teachers use the presentational, kids are able to use the language and it makes sense to them and it's relevant to them and it's real-world language.
Jorge Luis Tomarillo nació en Managua, Nicaragua, en 1958. Él es un artista no muy bien conocido que pinta murales en Washington, D.C.
Students can begin to master the presentational mode through communicating to their entire classroom. In this Level 3 Spanish class, each student is required to give 4 formal oral presentations that reflect aspects of Latin American culture. This student presentation illustrates how the work of a local Latino artist influences her own work as a painter.
Para hacer mi proyecto, fui a ver el mural. Después dibujé una pintura usando las técnicas de Somariva. La pintura consiste de 2 caras, una buena y una mala. Usé colores vivos, pero no tan tropicales como Somariva.
Muy bien. Dale un aplauso. Eso fue bastante bien.
Another benefit of students engaging in the presentational mode is that it offers a self-confidence. Not only are they sort of taking on another identity, but they're being successful at using another language and being understood.
凤凰，凤凰，你们枉为这群中的领长，你们死了吗？你们死了吗？从今后，请看我们勋良百姓。
In Haiyan Fu's multi-level Chinese class, the Level 4 students have prepared a stylized poetry presentation for the Level 2 and 3 students. The presentation focuses on how political and social ideas are expressed through Chinese literature.
我们双边界的主张。
哈哈，凤凰，凤凰，你们枉为这群中的领长，你们死了吗？你们死了吗？从今后，请。
Since we're all new speakers of the language, we're just trying to master the basics right now. So we haven't really been involved in like classic literature. It was really interesting to see the 2 poets that they introduced, you know, their interpretation of the poem. That is something that I'm kind of waiting for next year.
我在欢唱，是他在欢唱，是我在欢唱，
欢唱在欢唱，欢唱在欢唱，
只有欢唱，只有欢唱，欢唱，欢唱，欢唱。
The student love to perform. Whenever you have a chance, have them perform in any way. That's my philosophy.
The students in Jay Gao's 6th grade Chinese class present original skits in which they integrate newly learned vocabulary about different sports.
对不起，对不起，对不起，对不起。你好，我是孔妹，她是李在度。你呢？
我是何伟。我们明天去打篮球，好吗？我喜欢橄榄球、棒球，
我喜欢篮球、黄球。再见。
明天见。
中文作业。You had a letter.
The presentational mode encourages students to use the target language to communicate with a wider audience. These students will ultimately present their preferences about sports in a letter to a pen pal in China.
You can tell them 你妈妈喜欢什么运动，你爸爸喜欢什么运动，你哥哥喜欢什么运动。So we're going to expand this letter to our 笔友 and this letter will go to China.
やってますね。これが一番最初のドラフトですか？はい。すみません。何ですか？見せてください。
As part of a unit on Japanese tourism, Yoazama's students have researched landmarks and regions of Japan and are now creating travel brochures for presentation and display.
すみません。これ何ですか？
それは伊予田山です。
伊予岳山。山大きいですね。いいですね。大きい。大きい漢字わかりますか？
大きい。
はい、大きい。じゃあ漢字で書きましょう。漢字いいですね。それからこれ何ですか
？Team Rabies。 Team Rabies。チームレビースローラーブレードのチームです。
ローラーブレードのチームです。それは鹿児島ですか？はい。ファーストドラフトいいです。2回目のドラフト頑張ってください。いいですね。
That would prepare them for the next step, how they're going to use that brochure to make an effective commercial video.
Culture is integrated within all of the 5 C's and helps students to gain a deeper understanding of their relationship to the practices, products, and perspectives of other cultures as well as their own.
Embedded in the communication standard is teaching culture. When teachers are involved in having students communicate, they're talking about communicating using the culture sort of as the background. And it's multimodal and it's multisensory. So it's not just looking at listening, speaking, reading, writing. It's haptic, it's kinesthetic, it's auditory, it's visual.
It's vital to link language and culture because they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. It should be present in everything that we do.
Este instrumento
África.
es de África. Pero ¿en qué país en Sudamérica consideramos este como el instrumento nacional o uno de los más populares?
Perú.
El Perú, ¿no? El Perú. En el Perú, este instrumento renació en el Perú, ¿no? El cajón.
As a culminating activity to his lesson focused on African influences in Latin America, Pablo Muirhead invites his Level 2 students to learn firsthand some traditional Peruvian drumming.
Okay, vamos a empezar con una cosa que viene de África, que en inglés lo llamamos call and response. ¿Listos?
Making that cultural connection, that bridge for students and showing them that, wow, you know, there's this rich presence of people of African descent in the Americas.
Con los dedos sueltos así acá arriba.
It's my dream to influence as many students as I can in wanting to acquire another language, and in doing so, acquiring another culture.
Bien, bien.
Okimasu! Okimasu! Ohayou gozaimasu! Kao araimasu! Kao araimasu!
Margaret Dyer's 5th grade class is exploring the daily routines of Japanese students.
そしてこれは何ですか? Greta,どうぞ. 寝ます.
Most lessons that I plan, I can easily find a way to integrate culture into that lesson. With this one, it was very nice to have the picture panels that lent itself very easily to showing the culture of Japan in daily life.
Teaching them about the culture, and not just the culture that would be reflected in a lot of textbooks, and that is the history, the principal characters from their historical perspective, the main architectural features, some of that kind of what we call big C culture, but really teaching students the little c culture, how to interact on a daily basis, what to do to get along in that culture so that you really can fit in and interact with the people.
Il n'est pas loin. Traverser la place de la Révolution et au coin de l'avenue de Madeleine et la place de la Révolution et le petit salon. Oh, merci beaucoup, mademoiselle.
Robin Newman's 8th grade class has constructed an authentic French city. Students did extensive research to bring to life important cultural details.
Each student is assigned going on to the internet and coming up with a building that would be similar to theirs. If you have a library, what would it look like? If you have a hotel, what would it look like? And they learn that a hotel will have stars on it to designate how good a hotel it is. And they learn that a pharmacy has a green cross on it to show that it's a pharmacy.
We had to look up through various resources, the library, the internet, lots of different places. And then we had to get pictures and just really look around to see what lots of different pharmacies would look like. And then you had to find out what you would have in them. I mean, a pharmacy in France is pretty different from our CVS.
I would use the standards as a guide. In the general sense, as more or less a framework or a ladder on which I can build the different skills.
Très grande et bleue. Il y a beaucoup de tables et fleurs. Ici, le serveur travaille. Et ici...
In Lori Ramirez's Level 5 Spanish class, students have contacted Latin American artists to incorporate their perspective in a debate over a political boycott.
Hoy vamos a hablar un poquito de la situación, ¿no? ¿Tienen sus cartas?
There was a letter written recently by
Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Fernando Botero, and other Colombian intellectuals and artists and writers. It's a protest against the European community, specifically against Spain, but under the umbrella of the European community, requiring Colombians to have visas to enter Spain.
¿Qué dice esta carta? ¿Cuál es el tema general? ¿Voluntarios? ¿Víctimas? ¿Sí?
España no quiere dar visas a las artistas de Colombia.
Muy bien. ¿A solamente artistas o a
Todas las personas.
todos los colombianos? Muy bien. ¿Por qué eso es tanto un problema?